Hello and welcome back. This is part two of my two-parter about the Sandhill Crane nest in our local neighborhood. If you remember in part one, we were surmising whether these eggs were going to hatch on the Sandhill Crane nest because during about the middle of the incubation period, there was a bit of a flood in the pond in which this nest was built. And Mom was frantically trying to raise it during conditions in which it was just barely above freezing. And she was spending more time paying attention to the nest than she was her eggs, at least from the standpoint of incubating them. And the bottom line was we just weren't sure what to expect. These eggs were laid on April 1st and 2nd of 2022. And if you follow the calendar, typically Sandhill Crane eggs hatch out between the 28th and 32nd day. This meant that around the end of the month was about the time that these eggs should hatch. So we were on crane hatch watch. Myself and a number of people spent a lot of hours waiting and watching. For anyone that's ever watched a Sandhill Crane nest and waiting for that pip to appear in an egg, it's an agonizing experience. It's kind of like watching paint dry. You will wait for hours and hours, and eventually you will see Mom or Dad get off the nest, and then you look at the eggs and see if there's a pip or not. Of course, it's always hard to tell if what you're seeing is an actual hole in the egg or just a spot on the egg. So for a number of days, we looked and looked and looked, and there was just no pip. And we were getting rather worried that both of these eggs may have ended up biting the dust. Lo and behold, on the 32nd day of incubation for the second egg, a pip appeared in the egg. So we were quite certain that we were going to have a hatch in the next 24 hours. The question was, when? And as it always seems to be, it hatched out overnight, so we really couldn't see the actual hatching of the egg. But in the following morning, I arrived at about 5:30 in the morning and waited for Mom to get off the nest. And eventually around 7 o'clock she did, and there it was, a newly hatched colt. So we knew that one of the eggs was viable, but what about the second one? We were going to have to wait a number of more days to find out if that was the case. And we were also curious as to when the cranes would eventually abandon the nest if the second egg was not viable. So it was a matter of waiting some more. In the meantime, the first colt that hatched was getting a little bit bigger each day, and most of the time it appeared Mom would take the colt out into the fields to get worms and grubs and things like that, and then would come back and then sit on the nest overnight. And so as I think about the fourth day after the first colt had hatched, that for the first time I saw the egg not being tended by either of the parents. It was in the afternoon and Mom was around the pond with the colt, and Dad got off the nest and left it and just started walking towards the colt and the mom, and eventually joined them. And I thought, well, maybe this is it. Maybe the male has given up, they've both given up, and they will not incubate this second egg. Well, it was only about 15 minutes later when all of a sudden the male came screaming back to the pond. And at first I was trying to figure out exactly why. And after watching, I saw the crane take a beeline over to something that was floating in the water, and sure enough, it was a snapping turtle. And snapping turtles, they can cause mortality in Sandhill Crane nests. And but Dad recognized it as a threat and spent the time gingerly coaxing it away by pecking at it. Evidently, Sandhill Cranes know that snapping turtles can cause damage even to an adult Sandhill Crane, and it was gingerly pecking at its head, and eventually the turtle got the message and moved on. Interestingly, after that encounter, Dad decided to go back and incubate the egg again. So it was about the 5th day that both parents were out with the colt in the fields adjoining the pond, and we could say for sure that they had given up hope on that second egg. So as it ends up, we had a 50-50 hatch this year. One egg did and one didn't. Was it the flood? Was it the cold that did it? There's really no way of knowing for sure. I would say more than likely, if I had to put a bet on it, it probably was due to the inclement weather and the flooding that caused the demise of the second egg. Because in most years, both eggs do hatch. But it could have been infertile. We just don't know. So that pretty much summarizes what happened this year. It was kind of a win-lose kind of thing, I guess. But nonetheless, it's good to see the one colt up and around and both parents protecting it. Anyways, thanks for watching. And before we close things out, I'm going to include a video here that I'm also going to list separately on YouTube. The second day after the colt hatched, it was a beautiful sunny morning with mist rising off the pond and made just for a beautiful setting. So I hope you enjoy this video. Thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.